Welcome to Side Effects with an A. When effect is normally used, it's a noun. It's already occurred.
Effect is a verb meaning action. Action influences outcomes.
I'm Scott McGohan.
And I'm Anne-Marie Singleton. We will provoke you to think differently.
Side Effects, where problems are defined, solutions exposed. Welcome to Side Effects. I'm Scott McGohan.
And I'm Anne-Marie Singleton.
Hello, Anne.
Hey, how's it
we
going?
have a guest with us today.
Yeah, a gift and a guest.
A gift. She is a gift because we looked long and hard for someone like Suzanne Meek.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi there.
So Suzanne is our director of HR. And where'd you come from?
LexisNexis.
Well, we're grateful to have you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am grateful to be here.
2 weeks?
We're a third week.
Okay.
Third week on the job.
So
yes.
a lot of change.
Lots of change.
Because we're going to talk about change today.
Yes.
So what's going on in your life that's different, Anne?
Well, if those of you that have been following, I have 2 incoming freshmen. So my twins are going to be freshmen in high school, and that's a very big change.
Boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl, and it's almost on overload, but they're going to start soon, and then I think I'll be a little more even. So that's my big change.
Now, are they freshmen now going in their sophomore year?
No, they're coming out of 8th grade, going into high school. So
Ouch.
they were in a K-8 school where they've been 9 years. So this is a whole new experience. So how about your change?
Yeah, so I'm like a grandfather now,
Woo!
which is way beyond my thought process. I'm not really sure, but it's probably one of the neatest experiences I've ever had. And it's terrific. I love it.
Yeah. So there's good change and there's bad. I mean, I think all the things we just talked about were positive change, but it's still very, very stressful.
How about you, Suzanne?
Well, I have a new job.
I know, and we're glad.
And that's a change, a big change for both me and for you guys and for my family. So big change. And learning that I don't like being new, right? So that's...
Yeah. You know, it's different, too. I think what's interesting, obviously we have personal lives and we have our roles inside the organization. And my dad has always said, people don't like change and everything change is hard. Just try to change yourself. And I think great leaders understand that as economies change, as generations change, as your role changes, we have to change.
Yeah. And I think about that often because I'm a person who doesn't like the same thing every day. I don't like routine. If you spend any time around me, you'll know that. But I only like the changes that I can control. So there's that level too, right? As changes that come at you where you feel like you can't do anything about it, it's stressful, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So what about change in your life? So you came here, you had this big experience from Lexis, and then you come to little old McGohan Brabender.
Right. But, learning people, their names, how to go where the bathroom is, not learning how to go,
Yeah.
Where the bathroom is, and, learning the differences, what you guys already do and where I can make my mark and what I just need to continue. So it's, it's all change and it's stressful, but good stress, right? It's a good stress, but you also, you question yourself and, coming from somewhere for quite a number of years and then going new, it's, okay, what else is there to learn? Yeah.
And so you have a background in organizational development.
Correct.
Which involves really most of the time change inside of an organization, right?
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
So I've been listening to your side effects, and you've kind of delved in a lot of that, going into when anything is new in a company, how do you communicate differently, that change, how do you get people motivated to make that change, and it's all of that. And are you sure about the change that you want to make? And have you really thought about it and what that change is going to bring about for the company?
Coach me.
Yeah.
So let's just say I'm new to McGohan Brabender and you're in HR and I don't want to change. Why should change be important to me?
Well, it depends on what the change is,
Yeah.
and we have to get to that. Why is it important for you to change, and how is it going to benefit you, and how is it going to benefit McGohan Brabender?
So I think a lot of times too. I mean, one is, wouldn't you agree? Most people don't want to. Either they're stubborn,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
They could be delusional, which is really dangerous. Ann and I are a lot alike. We're kind of manic, so we're like our drug of choice has changed.
Right.
Is that fair?
Right. Something new every 10
Right,
minutes is
right.
perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
And for an organization, that can kind of be archaic.
Yes.
And then you sit in the middle, and you have to manage all of that.
Right.
The
And,
manic
and some of it's
personalities.
too much, right? Sometimes employees are like, I'm not going to change because they're going to change their mind. And so I'm going to continue doing what I've always done. And we see that both in our personal lives and professional lives. And so what are they motivated to change, and what's going to help them, and what's easy and what's not easy to change? There's, all of that.
Yeah. So a quick question for you. So I have a big corporate experience before coming here as well. And there's a few ways that companies make change inside of an organization. One is they send out a memo or an edict and say, this is the new way. And there's no other communication, right? So do it or else. And then there's other organizations that do it a little bit here and there, and they do it slowly. So what are some things to look at when you think about change? Let's just say you're changing one policy inside of an organization. I mean, what have you found that's worked really well? What have you found that's like a off limits in terms of introducing change to an organization?
Yeah, there's a lot of background work that has to happen, and understanding where is the organization at now, and getting their buy-in. What do other people want to see change, and getting their feedback, and doing a lot of pre-planning before you ever sit there and send out the communication in regards to here's what's changing, because you need to have the early adopters and the people that have those innovative ideas aligned ahead of time. And so then when you then finally make the change, the organization is even more ready. And
Yeah,
then
we're kind of we had a history, and thanks for bringing that up, because one of the things, especially with people like Ann and I, is, hey, we're going here.
I have this idea. Let's try this.
And then all of a sudden we get there and we turn around and
Nobody's
it's just
with
you
us.
and I. That's not leadership,
No,
right?
no.
Right. That's just
Right.
blazing a trail
Yeah.
and taking off as fast as you can. And really even thinking about the Affordable Care Act. So 2010, McGohan Brabender, we're a broker. What's going to happen with this 25,000 pages of legislation? Where are we going to arrive to? And what does that change look like? Which, quite frankly, freaked not only our industry out, but all of our people out. Am I going to have a job? If I have a job, what is it going to look like?
Right.
And then how do you unpack that in a reasonable way with pace that gives people time to catch up?
Yeah. So sometimes you have to change fast, but fast is okay as long as it's been thought out and planned.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Yep.
And so do you think that sometimes people don't change because they confuse busy, like I'm busy, or the customers are happy, or the customers won't accept change, and so we're just going to keep doing it this way? Like they fail to have that foresight to look ahead?
Right, that's some of it. And sometimes, like for the Affordable Care Act, they fail to change because they don't even know how they have to change or what they have to do. So there's a knowledge gap, and so therefore they don't even know the first step and what should they do first. And putting it out in chunks in regards to here's the first thing and the second thing and the third thing, and making it much more, digestible, and actually then,
Yeah, so a lot of people then just kind of stuck their head in the sand and let their ears fill with sand.
Complacency.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
I'm not even sure I think it's just, quite frankly, that legislation, it just overwhelmed people and they became paralyzed.
Right. Like I hope it goes away. I hope it goes. It's kind of like in school when you're sitting there and you're a little kid and you're like, if I don't look at the teacher, they won't call on me because I don't know the answer.
No eye contact.
Right. No eye contact. And then it won't happen.
What's the biggest, Suzanne, what's the biggest change you've ever made in your life?
Wow. I think new jobs, moving, having a child. I think probably having children probably was the biggest change, going from no children to having a child. So,
As a male, that was really complicated for me. I'm kidding. Yeah. How about you, Ann?
Yeah, I would say that probably having my kids, so going from 0 to 2 overnight was a big deal. That was a big change.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring that up because I watch Courtney, our daughter, with our grandson now, Jackson, and I watch her and her husband take care of Jackson. And I told Lori, I'm like, did we do all this stuff? And then, of course, she was like, yes. But obviously my wife was a lot more involved in that than I was. And I'm sure, I was a good father and I helped. But gosh, that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And I think that part of your brain doesn't remember all of that hard work, or else our planet would die out, because women would not have more children if they could remember how difficult it was to raise them.
Matter of fact, I think if men could have children, it would be like a national holiday when one did. Yeah.
That would be every day of the year. I'm up for an all year round party. So
Yeah. But it's big change.
it is a lot of change. And so you think about how you dealt with it then. You dealt with it, I mean, you planned ahead for 9 months. There's a zillion books on how to have a baby. There's a book about every day of the year about, what to expect the first year, what to expect the second year. And it goes by month. I mean, if you're a mother or a father and you've read those books, it's all that planning, right? And so it talks about it.
But they do in chunks, right? The what to expect when you're expecting does it in chunks, and that makes it much more digestible again. And I think that's what's really important. Do the little things. Do one thing at a time. Chip away at it. Sometimes it's just easier to
There's a
make
great
that
TED
change.
Talk, and I'll find it, and we'll put it on healthierbirthdays.com. But it was actually a person that talked about, because a lot of us, we want magnificent change in our lives. The issue is, whether it be we watch reality TV or our reference base is somebody else we look to or admire, we want instant gratification. We want change immediately. And change comes in small pieces.
Yes.
Right.
Especially like for an organization.
Well, and so to your point, sometimes when big change is introduced inside of an organization, the leaders might want a big return. They might want sales to go up immediately. They might want net profits to go up because of that change. And understanding when that change is going to kick in and what the results of that change are going to be is really important. That's hard for, I think, sometimes for business leaders, especially those who are investing their own dollars, because most change comes with a price tag, whether it's employees that are, spending more time doing something else now and they're not as productive, or buying a new piece of equipment or a new building.
So we talk a lot out at Aileron, and we've brought Mark Thompson in as a guest, and there's something he says I really like. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less.
Yeah.
So if you think about a company like Kodak, right? So they were the first company that actually had the technology for the digital camera, and it sat in the droves of their company in research and development for years and years and years. And because they were drunk on the fact that their profitability was in film, which, when's the last time you bought a roll of film?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they lost. I mean, not only that, but they were really smart. So they saw change, but they didn't execute on change.
Right. And so one of the things that I was reading about recently was something called the innovator's dilemma. And what they were talking about is that when companies have a new technology, sometimes when they look at that, fast is mistaken for failure because they're not sure if the market's ready for it or not. So they don't do it. And so if they've done something and they brought something to market before anyone else, that's what I mean by fast. So we'll call that first. And it doesn't take off right away, then they just abandon the idea and they don't come back to it. And I think that that's a perfect example of that. And there's a whole book written about it. Again, it's called The Innovator's Dilemma, talking about people who have ideas and they don't do anything with them.
Yeah. So, Suzanne, we keep talking.
Right.
So when we talk about change, like coming into McGohan Brabender, and I think one of the things that we would encourage you to really think about is inside every organization, people say these five words, relentless. That's not the way we do things around here. So how do we empower you and give you the courage to go out and say, hey, MB has to change. We've hired a terrific resource with a lot of expertise. How do you combat that?
I think you ask why, and you ask how did you get there, and maybe it's not time for some of that change. If they're like, hey, we don't want to change that now, you have to kind of find where is the energy level, where do you find that employees are like, this does need to change and no one's listened, and I think that's what you focus on first. At least for me, in my first 90 days, that's what I plan to do. Is where is that energy and what does need to be brought up to your level, Scott, and talk about here's what I'm hearing and here's what I think employees would like us to look at and change. And then you do that and there's energy around it. But there is a reason if they're like, hey, we don't want to change this. I think why? Why is it working? And maybe deal with that later.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, at least when I'm hearing in this conversation, which I just love this open dialogue, is a lot of times we change because either our competitors are doing something different or personal changes because something happened in my family. I guess at the end of the day, it's around planning for change.
Yes.
And we don't plan. We're very reactionary. We have to change because of this.
Right.
We have to change because of that. I don't think that we're really intentional about building change in our lives for the future self or future organization. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Yeah. So anybody have any friends that are planners out there that plan everything, that schedule everything? I mean, I know I do. And they're planning for everything. And so I always say to them, you're like missing your whole life, what are you doing? And so there's a balance, right? You probably need both. You need some spur of the moment things. You need a lot of planning. And when you're talking about business and people's lives and people's financial livelihood, it makes sense to plan. And most of what we do with our clients involves change. Almost everything we do involves change, whether it's just a simple change to their benefits, if it's a change to how we're communicating with them, or if we're asking their employees to do something big, like getting involved or engaged in their own health. Most of what we're doing involves change.
Right.
So if you were going to meet somebody inside MB that's reluctant to change, how would you have that conversation? How would you unpack that with them?
I'd find out what's important to them and get to know them on a personal level, because I think change starts at the personal level.
Excellent.
And see what they would be willing to change, and maybe not even pose it as change. What have you wanted to see better about yourself? Make it more positive. I think we tend to harp on the negative instead of here's what can be positive. And the other thing is, I think there's a lot of social norms out there that can help. If they see coworkers or their leaders doing the things that we all should be doing, I think that makes a world of difference too.
Gotcha.
And there's actual research on it. Like you take hotels, for example, that ask if you would reuse your your linens again. They've done studies that have said that if they just say, hey, would you be willing to reuse your linens, versus we have about 50% of our guests that are, reusing their linens. If you tag that on both, they are more likely 70% of the time, if they're able to say other people are doing it,
right,
to see the changed behavior.
Well,
so if you're changing that behavior, and you're seeing it.
And that's funny. So I have a personal confession to make. I always choose no. I wouldn't and I'm as green as it comes. I don't use Roundup in my yard. I don't like chemicals. I buy organic. But when they ask me if I would reuse my towels, I'm like, heck no, I'm not going to reuse my towels. I paid a lot of money for this hotel room, and that's one of my benefits of being on vacation is I don't have to use my towel twice, right? But if what you just said out loud, it immediately made me have a feeling that I would reuse. I mean, immediately I was like, okay, everyone else is doing it. I'll do it too. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I think one of the things too that I really like what you had to say around trying to make a personal connection, because I think also from 30,000 feet as an organization, this is what we're going. We need everybody on board immediately.
Yeah.
Like just step on board. So even inside the walls of McGohan Brabender through change, we told people verbally we're on a quest for naysayers, bystanders, and victims, because our company can only afford believers. Now, we know inside of every organization, you're not going to have 70, 80% engagement. We feel like we have a high engagement rate, but we also have to be able to tell people, look, just because we want you to do this and you don't want to, it doesn't make you a bad person. It's just there's maybe a different organization for you.
Right.
And that'll be a challenge for you, Suzanne.
But sometimes that's the conversation to have. I mean, I don't think the same organization is for everyone, and that's a great motivator. They might have other dreams in other places. So that's a hard conversation. We certainly don't want that to happen at any company. Any of my HR colleagues at any company, they would like to keep employees, but sometimes they're just not in the right job or the right company.
Yeah, I always like what Dave always says is, look, 20% of the people will do whatever you ask them to do every single day. 20% of the people will do nothing you ask them to do, and it's really that 60% that are available for that change. And you said something even more powerful, which we talked about kids and growing up, is people most often do what they see versus what they hear.
Yeah.
So if I need change, how do I get leadership and collective energy inside the building for other people to say, well, if they're doing it, And I guess that's okay.
Yeah. Behavior follows attitude. And sometimes we think it's the other way around. But behavior follows attitude. Like you think about like when you're a kid and your mom says, or your dad, turn off the lights.
Right.
You're not turning off the lights because you think that it's good for the environment. It's a habit.
Right.
And so you grew up with the lights turning off. So behavior follows attitude.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you say that,
Yeah.
like I'll go home and all the lights are on. My kids moved out, but they'll come home for like a day and all the lights are on. And I'm like but for years my dad would say, turn the lights off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, big deal. Why? Well, now I know.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And I'm not professionally trained in change or behavior organization, behavior, what do you call that?
Organizational behavior.
Thank you. Organizational behavior like you are. But I bring this back to a quick story for my clients when high deductible health plans first came out and employers wanted to offer those side by side with a PPO. I had many of my employers say, well, we're going to offer these, but I'm going to still take the PPO plan. And I was like, so you want all your employees to enroll in the HSA, but you're not going to take it. I said, that's fine. But when they ask you what plan you enrolled in, you tell them it was the HSA because I can't get all your employees to do it if they know you didn't. And so it's just a natural thing. You're right, is people do what they see.
Yeah, those early adopters and the leaders that are early adopters are key.
So where's the healthy balance? So you've got people like Ann and Scott who want to change every day. And then you've got people that don't want to change. And then obviously being in human resources, so you're around all these personalities. How do you help us not go too fast for people? And then how do you make sure that you're nudging the people that don't want any change?
Right. I think small change is the key, and having a light at the end of the tunnel. Here's where we're going to go, and how are we going to get there, and really have a plan to say here are our checkpoints and what we're going to do is very important. And don't muddy the water. Have maybe one or two things that you're working towards and focused on, and as you make progress, you move towards those kind of checkpoints.
Excellent point. I think one of the things, too, that we've always encouraged people to do is inside of change, you need to build stationary horizons.
Mm-hmm.
So
Don't keep
things that
moving
you
them.
can see. Because a lot of times you'll say, look, I want a big house. I want a family. I want my kids to go to college. I want this. I want that. I want that. I want that. And it's so far off into the distance that you can't make the incremental steps. And what you need is a stationary horizon, an event that you can see that's actually possible and obtainable.
And celebrating those wins, celebrating those every checkpoint, so that you can kind of look back and say, see what you've done, instead of just waiting until the very end.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And so I'll bring this back to my kids because I said at the beginning of the podcast, they're going to be freshmen in high school. And everyone who has had high schoolers that have gone before me have said, it goes so fast. It's in a blink of an eye. Don't blink your eye. And I believe that. And so I have actually started to put together a 4-year plan for my kids' high school years so I can not miss the things I need to be paying attention to. Like, I want to enjoy it versus just complain about, driving them around when I'm, trying to be from here to there and everywhere. And so I'm actually planning it with I'm doing it by quarter of.
Ouch. If I was your kid, I would throw up my mouth.
It's for me. It's for me.
I
It's
get
not,
it.
Not for them.
I got it.
It's so I
think it's beautiful.
It's so I
Oh,
can
yeah,
enjoy
from
it.
your side, it's beautiful.
So
Yeah.
they're going to do their own planning. It's for me. It's mom's plan of how to enjoy it. So anyway, that's
Poor
love
kids.
that.
Just let them go. Just let them go.
They have a lot of freedom for 14-year-olds. They're 14. I keep saying, you know what? You're not a little adult. You're a child. Know your place.
Exactly.
That's my parental advice.
Enjoy the moments. And here's the other thing. And don't worry if you have a setback or you have a failure. Regroup, figure out what you do differently, and move forward. I mean, those are great learnings. I think sometimes we learn much more from our failures than our successes. And the key is to get back on that bike, or whatever analogy you want to use, but just to sit there and say, what do we do differently, and move forward.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they say life's a wonderful teacher, and she rarely gets an apple on her desk. And the apples are normally our pain, and that's where we learn. So, Suzanne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Change is a big deal. One thing that I really heard that I really liked is celebrate this organizationally. Is we all have these aspirational lists of where we want to be, and we're emphatic about it. Sometimes we just need to stop and say, Well done. Well done. So we'll put information out on healthierbirthdays.com. If you've got comments, you can contact me at scott@healthierbirthdays.com or
Ann at healthierbirthdays.com. And we really appreciate you listening. Thanks again, Suzanne, for being here.
have a terrific day. Thanks for listening and opening your mind. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach us at scott@healthierbirthdays.com.
Or Ann at healthierbirthdays.com. We hope you'll join us next time
on Side Effects.